From the very first second, there's a question that silently troubles everyone who has ever heard the name Nikola Tesla. What if the world had believed him? This question isn't a philosophical provocation. It's a real, almost physical weight that accompanies anyone who delves into the history of his experiments. And perhaps that's precisely why, before you go any further, I need to warn you. When you enter Tesla's mind, nothing remains the same. Your fears change. Your beliefs change. Even your perception of what is real begins to shift. Because Tesla didn't think like us. He saw the universe as someone looking from the outside, as someone who perceives patterns that most people never even imagine exist. Tesla said that we live surrounded by an invisible, pulsating, universal energy, an energy that doesn't belong to us, but is available to everyone, like the air we breathe. From a young age, he had the feeling that this energy was calling to him, as if the universe were trying to reveal a code that only he could hear. This intimate relationship with the invisible shaped his entire life, creating in him a mixture of fascination and anguish. Fascination because he knew he was holding the key to liberating humanity. Anguish because, the more he discovered, the more he realized that the world was not ready for this freedom. It's impossible to understand Tesla without understanding this internal conflict, the certainty of being in the presence of something grand and, at the same time, the awareness that humanity might reject it out of fear. He himself wrote that the most profound discoveries are always met with resistance, because they require us to abandon everything we thought we knew. And perhaps that's why Tesla always walked on the border between admiration and isolation. He knew too much. He saw too far. He touched what no one else dared even imagine. There were nights when Tesla would walk alone around his laboratories, watching electrical discharges dance in the air as if they were extensions of his own mind. To any ordinary person, this would be just an impressive spectacle. But for him, each spark was a signal, each vibration a language, each frequency a bridge to something greater. He deeply believed that the universe was not made of matter, but of vibration, and that changed everything. Because if the universe is vibration, then everything that exists can be influenced, transformed, and even awakened. But this extraordinary insight also generated unsettling questions that haunted Tesla like shadows. If all energy is vibration, is human consciousness also vibration? Are our thoughts not just internal processes, but transmissions that travel through space? And if that's true, who or what could pick up these transmissions? These questions never left him in peace. They propelled him, and at the same time slowly consumed him. While the world saw Tesla as an eccentric inventor, he saw himself as an explorer of a reality that official science still refused to acknowledge. He believed that humanity lived imprisoned not by a lack of technology, but by a lack of vision. And this deeply troubled him. He saw potential where others saw risk. He saw freedom where others saw threat. And this put him from an early age in conflict with a collective mentality, shaped by fear, control, and economic interests. This is where the most important micro-conflict of this part arises. Tesla knew he was about to reveal something that could free humanity from energy dependence. But he also knew that in doing so, he would awaken powerful forces that would never allow it to become a reality. This dilemma haunted him throughout his life. He wanted to share his discovery, but feared it would be misused. Or worse, that it would be buried before it was even understood. And this is where a disturbing question emerges like a blade. Does humanity truly want the truth when that truth threatens everything it knows? Tesla believed otherwise. And that's what makes his story so profound and so tragic. He wasn't fighting against devices, machines, or technical resistance. He was fighting against human fear. He was fighting against people's inability to accept that the universe could be much simpler and much more powerful than they imagined. As he walked among giant coils and colossal antennas, Tesla felt he was getting closer and closer to deciphering the vibrational code that sustained life itself. It was as if the universe was about to reveal its most precious secret. But behind this feeling of imminent revelation, a shadow silently approached. Tesla knew his discoveries would not go unnoticed. He knew that by touching the heart of universal energy, he was breaking a boundary that many considered forbidden. And this is where the question becomes inevitable and unsettling. What triggers more fear? The unknown or the possibility that the impossible might be real? Tesla was about to discover that the answer to this question would change the course of his life and the course of history. Because the moment he tried to show the world what he had found, everything, absolutely everything, would change. When Nikola Tesla arrived in Colorado Springs, he didn't just see a makeshift laboratory in the middle of an isolated plain. He saw a meeting point between Earth and the universe, a place where natural frequencies seemed purer, more intense, almost as if nature itself were willing to reveal its secrets. Tesla walked across the terrain with the feeling that he was about to cross an invisible frontier, and that's exactly what happened. During his experiments, he noticed something that would forever change his understanding of energy. One day, while activating one of the giant coils, he heard a strange sound, like a distant echo coming from the air itself. It wasn't ordinary noise. It was deep, rhythmic, almost alive. Tesla described this moment as hearing the planet respond. And it's difficult to grasp the magnitude of this until you imagine something similar happening to you in your daily life. Think about when you ask a question aloud, alone, and for some reason feel that the environment seems to respond, even without words. It's that inexplicable feeling that something bigger exists, something that listens to you. Tesla experienced this sensation in a real, physical, and measurable way. The intensification of experiments led to a sequence of phenomena beginning to occur. In one of them, an energy pulse shot from the coil with enough force to travel for kilometers. When Tesla recorded this wireless transmission, he wasn't just proving a concept. He was opening a door that no one else imagined existed. Energy didn't need cables. It didn't need networks. It didn't need generation stations. It was there, all around us, waiting to be used as a natural resource. And this brought a disturbing realization. Everything we believed to be limited could, in fact, be infinite. To explain this impact, imagine your home for a moment. Imagine turning on a light without needing an outlet. Imagine your cell phone charging simply by being in the room. Imagine an entire neighborhood illuminated by air. It's something so far removed from our reality that it seems like science fiction. But Tesla was there, witnessing exactly that, and having to deal with the emotional responsibility of knowing that the world wasn't ready to accept this truth. And at the same time, he faced small psychological struggles that any of us have experienced. Tesla dealt with loneliness, with doubt, with the anxiety of wondering if it was worth continuing when almost no one believed in him. This part of the story connects us directly to our own lives. How many times have you had a powerful idea, something you felt could improve your life or the lives of others, but given up because someone said it was impossible? How many times have you abandoned something deep within yourself because the world didn't seem ready? Tesla felt this every day, only on a much larger scale. But what was most impressive about Tesla was how he reacted to these internal conflicts. Instead of stopping, he deepened his experiments. He believed that if the universe showed him something so grand, he had a moral obligation to continue, and this determination led him to the most decisive event of his life. During one of his tests, he realized that the devices in the laboratory were receiving energy so intensely that some of them began to function even without being connected. The walls vibrated, the floor seemed to pulsate, the air acquired a different texture, as if it were charged with something invisible. It was at that moment that Tesla had absolute confirmation that he had found what he called the energy of infinity. It wasn't metaphorical, it wasn't poetic, it was real, an energy that permeated everything, that could be captured anywhere, at any time. And this realization brought a complex mix of emotions. He felt euphoria, of course, because he was facing the greatest discovery in human history. But at the same time, he felt fear, not of the energy, but of people. He knew that this discovery would be rejected, fought against, distorted. He knew that those who dominated the world through scarcity would not allow abundance to become a reality. An interesting detail is that Tesla used to take notes on how human beings react when faced with a truth that is too great. He said that people tend to protect themselves by dismissing what they don't understand, and it's easy to see this in our daily lives. When someone says they're going to change careers, many doubt them. When someone talks about starting a company, many criticize them. When someone reveals a bold dream, many try to diminish it. It's a collective emotional mechanism, and Tesla faced this in the most brutal way possible, the threat of having his discovery erased from history. But before that happened, he still had a moment of deep reflection, looking at that laboratory illuminated by blue electrical discharges that seemed alive. He understood that he had touched the heart of what many would call impossible. He had demonstrated that the universe is more accessible than we imagine, and that infinite energy is not a myth, but a reality that was there, pulsating. And this realization brought another disturbing question. If Tesla discovered this over 100 years ago, what else has been discovered and hidden before it reached us? This question marked his conscience so strongly that it began to influence all his subsequent steps. He was no longer fighting only for science. He was fighting for humanity's right to know a truth that could set it free. But at the same time, he began to perceive signs that external forces were moving, observing, waiting for the right moment to act. And it is precisely at this moment, between the euphoria of discovery and the weight of the approaching danger, that this part ends. Because now arises the question that will pave the way for the next stage of the narrative. Who was the first to act when they realized that Tesla had tapped into an energy that no one wanted to be revealed? When Tesla's discovery began to radiate beyond the walls of Colorado Springs, something subtle, almost imperceptible began to happen. Influential people, investors, journalists, and even political scientific figures who had previously ignored his work began to observe him with a strange, silent, uncomfortable attention. It was as if everyone had realized at the same time that Tesla wasn't just building machines. He was threatening entire power structures. He knew this, even if he didn't speak openly about it, and this premonition grew within him like an increasingly dense shadow. The first concrete sign that something was wrong came in a simple way: a letter. A short, polite text, but laden with hidden intentions. It was a gentle warning that some investors were reconsidering their support, claiming that the project had become too ambitious. Tesla read this letter in silence, aware that it didn't stem from technical doubts, but from fear. What had changed so quickly? Who had pressured these investors? Who was behind this sudden change in behavior? And here arises the first question that cuts through the narrative like a blade. If you were about to reveal something capable of liberating billions of people, how many would try to stop you? This question leads us to an essential point. Tesla wasn't fighting against flaws. He was fighting against interests that always thrived, fueled by scarcity. And infinite energy destroyed scarcity like fire consumes paper. Events began to intensify. A group of journalists who planned to visit his facilities canceled their visit without explanation. Scientific journals began rejecting his articles, even those dealing with simpler concepts. Tesla realized that something orchestrated was happening, but he didn't yet know where the initial blow came from, until, on a quiet afternoon, he received a visit from an intermediary of J.P. Morgan, the greatest financier of the time. The man entered with a polite but empty smile. The conversation was short, but with a clear message. "Professor Tesla, we need to talk about the direction of your research." And this is where the narrative demands a break from the norm. Why would a banker be so interested in a scientific project that theoretically wouldn't have a direct connection to his business? The answer isn't in the science, it's in the power. Morgan knew that free energy, transmitted through the air, would destroy the entire structure based on dependence on paid electricity. The power grids, the coal companies, the oil monopolies, everything would crumble like dominoes at the touch of Tesla's idea. And instead of ignoring the problem, Morgan decided to confront it. The meeting between Tesla and Morgan is one of the tensest moments in the history of science, even though few talk about it. Tesla explained his vision with passion. He imagined a planet where no human being would be without energy, where machines would function cleanly, where there would be no dependence on fuels, where anyone, anywhere, could connect to the vibrational heart of the Earth. Morgan listened to everything in silence. Then he asked only one question: "And how am I going to charge for this?" This question echoed through Tesla's body like a blow. There was the stark truth. It wasn't the discovery that was dangerous. It was what it represented. It was the threat of breaking the invisible link that held the world captive. And it's impossible not to ask, to what extent does humanity truly desire to be free? At that moment, Tesla understood that his battle had ceased to be scientific and had become psychological, social, and political. He knew he was meddling with something that many considered forbidden. In the following days, doors began to close one by one. Funding disappeared. Equipment was seized. Journalists began publishing articles insinuating that Tesla had lost his sanity. People around him began to treat him with suspicion. And this forces us to confront another uncomfortable question. Why does the world always try to destroy those who are ahead of their time? Perhaps because the truth, when it threatens structures, is received as an enemy. Tesla, however, did not react with anger. He reacted with introspection. He spent hours walking the streets of New York, reflecting on everything that had happened. He observed people on the sidewalks, workers, mothers, children, and thought about how their lives could be different if his discovery became a reality. He imagined houses heated without cost, machines running without toxic fuels, entire cities illuminated by invisible waves. He thought about the peace that could arise from a world without wars over oil, and this renewed his determination. But even so, another narrative pattern breaks down. How much power can a person maintain when the whole world decides they must fail? The external pressure began to become unbearable. Tesla saw friends distance themselves, investors disappear, doors close. People didn't want to associate with someone who was being portrayed as too dangerous. It was the cruelest form of isolation, not caused by failure, but by greatness. Still, there is something about Tesla that no one has been able to destroy: his vision. He believed that his mission was greater than his name, greater than his own lifespan. He believed that, even if they tried to erase him, a part of his discovery would survive in the minds of those born decades later. This quiet, almost spiritual faith kept him steadfast, while the world around him tried to dismantle his reputation. It was in this scenario of growing tension that Tesla realized something even more unsettling. If such powerful forces were willing to destroy him before his project was even completed, then what he had discovered was far more valuable than he had imagined. The persecution did not prove his madness. It proved his accuracy. It proved that he had touched the core of what sustains the modern world, the way we control and distribute energy. At this point, one last question needs to be left unanswered to pave the way for the next part. If the system was able to silence the greatest inventor in history, what wouldn't it be capable of doing with his discoveries after his death? When Nikola Tesla died on January 7, 1943, his life could have ended there, but his story did not. On the contrary, it was precisely at that moment that the darkest and most unsettling chapter began. The instant the hotel where he lived announced his death, agents of the American government were immediately sent to his room. There was no delay, no mourning, no hesitation. The priority was not to honor his memory. It was something else: to seize everything he had left behind. The first witnesses reported that the bedroom door was closed, and no one else could enter. Hours later, boxes and more boxes began to be removed. Notebooks, letters, devices, coils, diagrams, calculations, personal notes. Everything was collected in silence. It's almost impossible not to notice the symbolism of this. Tesla was ignored for years, but on the day he died, he became a matter of utmost urgency. What was really in his documents that justified this immediate reaction? One fact that is almost never mentioned, but recorded in official files, is that the operation was coordinated by Office of Alien Property Custodian, a department created to seize the assets of foreigners considered sensitive. The irony is that Tesla was already an American citizen. Even so, they treated his papers as if they were dangerous property. And here's a detail that many are unaware of. Among the experts called in to analyze his documents was John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, a brilliant engineer. He analyzed hundreds of pages and reported that the documents contained speculative theories, a vague phrase that, even today, many consider a way to conceal the true content. This operation was not an isolated event. It's part of a historical pattern. Whenever a discovery threatens the existing power structure, it disappears. Think about that for a second. More than 90% of Tesla's inventions never saw the light of day. Many were never published. Others were crossed out, rewritten, or reinterpreted by third parties. And some seem to have evaporated. How do we explain this immense number of gaps? Who decides what can be revealed and what cannot? And when we look at what is known about his final years, everything becomes even stranger. There are reports indicating that Tesla was working on a device called Teleforce, a system that, according to him, could preserve peace by preventing wars. The media at the time dubbed it the death ray, but Tesla insisted it was not about destruction, but about deterrence. What happened to the plans for this machine? Were they lost? Were they destroyed? Or were they absorbed into some secret program that developed far from the public eye? To this day, No one knows. Even more curious is the fact that several countries, including the United States and the Soviet Union, showed interest in Tesla's documents during the Cold War. There are records showing that the Soviets tried to track everything he had written, believing that his technology could break the arms race. This international interest reinforces the idea that Tesla discovered something extremely valuable, something far beyond electricity, something that directly touched on the field of environmental energy, resonance, and high-power frequencies. And this brings us to another important point. After the documents were seized, some papers were returned to the family, but not all. About a dozen boxes remain missing to this day. Where did they go? Who has them? Why were they never released? The official justification is that the documents were not useful. But if they weren't useful, why weren't they released? Why were they kept? The silence surrounding this is more revealing than any answer. Meanwhile, strange behaviors began to emerge in the world of science. A few months after Tesla's death, several military groups began working on concepts that closely resembled his notes: directed energy, advanced radar, high-intensity electromagnetic fields. In an almost unsettling coincidence, the development of radar, a technology that changed the course of World War II, advanced precisely in the direction Tesla had described years before. This could be just a scientific coincidence, or it could be a silent echo of the knowledge that was taken from his bedroom. Meanwhile, reports are emerging from researchers who have had partial access to some of his documents. They claim that Tesla described the planet as a gigantic resonant sphere, capable of generating energy through natural vibrations. According to him, the Earth was a living machine, and its frequencies could be used to power entire systems. This concept, rejected at the time, was later partially corroborated by modern studies on the subject. Schumann resonance, a natural frequency of 7.83 Hz that directly influences the human brain. How did Tesla know this decades before modern science? Another fascinating point involves secret testing. In 1996, an American military study mentioned technologies based on resonant energy transfer, with applications that closely resemble what Tesla attempted to create. The document never mentions his name, but experts claim the similarities are too evident to ignore. How can we explain that concepts ridiculed at the beginning of the century gained traction at the end of it, mysteriously aligned with ideas that were confiscated? These facts are not isolated coincidences. They form a continuous line pointing to the same conclusion. Tesla's work has not disappeared. It has been absorbed, fragmented, hidden, reinterpreted, and most likely used in areas where the general population would never have access. This creates a profound moral dilemma. If these technologies exist, why aren't they shared? Why do they remain locked away while the world faces energy crises, wars, and extreme inequality? This is the most disturbing part. It's not just Tesla's legacy that has been hidden. It's the real possibility that we live surrounded by discoveries that could have transformed the world, if they had been allowed. And in a way, the most unsettling question is also the simplest. Could humanity have been deliberately deprived of the future Tesla tried to create? And it is precisely in this silence, in this void of answers, that the next part begins to take shape. Because now that we know what they did with their documents, another inevitable question arises. What did Tesla know about the impact of these frequencies on the human body and mind? And why was this also hidden? When we talk about Nikola Tesla's discoveries, most people only think of electricity, strange machines, giant coils, and blue sparks cutting through the air. But that's just the surface. What Tesla was really seeking was to understand the invisible relationship between energy and life. He believed that the human body was not just a collection of organs and biological functions, but a vibrational system connected to the Earth's energy field. This idea, considered absurd by the science of the time, is now beginning to take shape with modern studies showing how external frequencies can influence emotions, health, and even healing processes. Tesla perceived this intuitively. For him, the human body functioned like an antenna, capable of absorbing, amplifying, and emitting energy. In his lesser-known writings, he describes moments when he felt specific physical vibrations upon entering certain emotional states. He believed that negative emotions had lower, heavier frequencies, while elevated emotions, such as clarity, inspiration, and peace, vibrated at higher frequencies. This type of thinking could easily be found in contemporary spirituality books, but Tesla spoke of it in a scientific context, attempting to translate subjective sensations into real measurements. And this leads us to an inevitable reflection. If the human body is influenced by vibrations, how much of what we feel is truly our own, and how much is merely a response to the environment? Think of a typical day. You wake up feeling good, but upon entering a tense environment, an office, a hospital, a subway station, your energy changes rapidly. You didn't decide to feel bad, it simply happened. Or the opposite. When you approach someone calm and inspiring, your mind seems to clear effortlessly. It's as if your body is responding to something invisible, yet very real. Tesla believed that this something invisible was the vibrational field itself that surrounds everything. The impact of this insight goes far beyond physics. He believed that if we could understand and consciously utilize these frequencies, we could not only move machines, but also balance the emotional state of humanity. In his words, when we master the energy of vibration, we will master health and mind. Decades after his death, studies on brainwaves, Schumann resonance, and frequency therapy demonstrate that Tesla was closer to the truth than many could have imagined. But there's an even more surprising detail. During his experiments with wireless power transmission, Tesla realized that certain frequencies created direct effects on the human body. In his notes, he describes sensations of lightness, mental clarity, and even changes in breathing when certain frequencies filled the environment. He knew he wasn't experiencing a simple psychological reaction. There was a physical phenomenon happening there, and this kind of discovery was too dangerous to go unnoticed. Imagine for a moment the impact this would have on the world today. If there were a technology capable of harmonizing emotional states, reducing anxiety, or stimulating focus simply by emitting specific frequencies, how many problems would disappear? How many conflicts could be avoided? How much emotional suffering would be reduced? But at the same time, the opposite question arises. How many economic interests would cease to exist? How many systems based on medication, treatments, and long-term dependencies would lose their meaning? These questions lead us to a central point. Contrary to what many imagine, Tesla was not someone isolated from the human emotional world. He deeply felt the tension between what he discovered and what humanity was prepared to receive. On several occasions, he wrote about the fear that his discoveries would be misused or misunderstood. He knew that, just as one frequency could heal, another could cause harm. Vibrations are neutral, their use is not, and this placed his research in extremely delicate territory. In the last years of his life, he began to observe more closely how people behaved around him. He noticed emotional patterns, subconscious reactions, mood swings that happened for no apparent reason. He believed that we are affected by much more than we realize, and that the modern world, with all its noise and artificial electricity, unbalances our own natural frequencies. He saw this as a major problem. The more disconnected a human being is from themselves, the more vulnerable they become to external manipulation, and perhaps that's why part of Tesla's legacy has been silenced. The discovery that vibration influences the human mind is not just science, it's power. Power to heal, but also power to control. Theses of this kind don't disappear by chance. They are hidden because they reveal that human beings are not as free as they imagine. They reveal that emotions can be manipulated, that thoughts can be influenced, that behaviors can be altered without the person realizing it. But Tesla did not see this as an inevitable risk. He believed that if knowledge were shared, if it were understood by all, not just a few, then humanity could evolve to a higher state of consciousness. He saw the human being as a vibrational being, capable of becoming more emotionally stable, more intuitive, more connected to the Earth's natural field. His vision was of a world where health and balance did not depend on medicine, but on harmony. And this is the most important point of this part. Tesla didn't just want to transform machines. He wanted to transform people. He wanted every human being to have access to their own inner power, for each person to know how to adjust their own frequencies through simple practices, body awareness, and connection with the environment. He believed that when humanity understood this, it would cease to live in internal and external conflict. Now, the question that sets the stage for the next part is inevitable. If Tesla knew that the human body could be influenced and strengthened by frequencies, what does this mean for the world today? And why is this truth still being hidden? When we look at Nikola Tesla's entire life, we realize that he wasn't just creating machines or daring theories. He was trying to leave a map, a silent path showing how each person could reconnect with the natural energy that exists within and around us. Tesla believed that human evolution wouldn't happen solely through technology, but through consciousness. He saw each human being as a unique vibrational field, capable of transforming itself when it understood its own frequency. And perhaps that's exactly what they've tried hardest to hide. Not the machine, not the technology, not the experiments, but the inner power that would awaken when we understood that we are an active part of the universe's energy field. It's impossible not to be moved when we think about this. Tesla lived much of his life alone, misunderstood, ridiculed, or seen as a threat. But even so, he never gave up on his conviction that the world could be better. He believed in humanity, even when humanity didn't believe in him. And this reveals a profound truth. Some people see so far that they become mirrors of the future, even while living in the present. Tesla was one of those people. He left clues, signs, guidance, but it's up to us to decide what to do with it now. The most important thing is to understand that when we talk about energy, we're not just talking about electricity. We're talking about how we think, how we feel, how we react. We're talking about how our emotions shape our reality. We're talking about how environments, people, and even thoughts have vibrations that can strengthen or weaken us. And Tesla knew this. He knew that a vibrationally balanced person is more emotionally stable, more creative, more intuitive, more courageous. He knew that when someone learns to adjust their own frequency, they stop living as a victim of the environment and begin to consciously influence it. But what to do with this knowledge? How to transform such a profound idea into real-world practice in everyday life? This is where a strategic plan comes in, which you can start implementing today. None of this requires complex machines, money, or special equipment. It only requires awareness and consistency. The first step is simple yet powerful. Observe your energy. This means noticing how you feel throughout the day. Do you feel lighter in some places and heavier in others? Do you feel that certain people drain you while others uplift you? Do you notice that certain thoughts strengthen you while others weaken you? This is the first level of vibrational awareness. Tesla said that energy never lies. It always shows what is really happening, even when words fail to reveal it. The second step is to adjust your vibration through your body. Breathing is one of the quickest mechanisms for this. Long, deep breaths increase your internal frequency. Short, tense breaths decrease it. Try taking 3 deep breaths each time you feel anxious or out of control. It may seem too simple, but it is precisely this simplicity that makes the process powerful. Your body responds immediately. Your mind slows down. Your energy harmonizes. This is how you begin to regain internal control. The third step is choosing the information you consume. Everything you read, watch, or listen to carries a frequency. Negative content lowers your vibration. Inspiring content expands it. Tesla believed that ideas shape the vibrational field of the mind. So instead of watching negative news in the morning, for example, try starting your day with something that raises your consciousness. An inspiring video, a deep reflection, a moment of silence. How you start your day defines your frequency for the following hours. The fourth step is to align your environment. This includes simple actions such as keeping your room organized, opening windows to renew the air, avoiding places that you know drain your energy, and seeking environments that make you feel lighter. Tesla believed that the space around us functions as an extension of our own energy field. If the environment is charged, you become charged too. If the environment is harmonized, your mind follows suit. The fifth step is perhaps the most transformative, protecting your emotional energy. This means learning to say no when necessary, avoiding pointless arguments, limiting the influence of people who always bring negativity, and getting closer to people who strengthen you. This is one of the most important vibrational practices. When you protect your energy, you begin to notice profound changes in your mood, your creativity, and even your physical health. And the sixth step is the one most connected to Tesla's legacy, tuning in to the Earth's energy. This can be done in basic ways, such as walking barefoot for a few minutes on natural ground, touching plants, paying attention to the wind, or simply sitting outdoors for a few minutes without distractions. It seems small, but it creates a real connection with the planet's natural frequency. Tesla believed that this tuning restores the body's energy balance. Today, studies show that it reduces inflammation, anxiety, and even improves sleep quality. It's modern science confirming what he intuited decades ago. When you consistently put these steps into practice, something begins to happen. You become more aware, more centered, more perceptive. You start to notice patterns where you saw nothing before. You begin to feel that there is something greater guiding your movements. This is the vibrational transformation that Tesla envisioned. He didn't want people to depend on external technologies to feel balanced. He wanted each person to discover their own inner power, their own frequency, their own capacity to create a more aligned life. And perhaps the most profound part of this journey is understanding that Tesla's forbidden energy was never just about machines or inventions. It was always about awakening, about remembering who we are, about reclaiming what already exists within us, about not living on autopilot, about realizing that life doesn't have to be heavy, confusing, or chaotic. It can be vibrant, conscious, intentional. Now that you've made it this far, there's only one essential question. What are you going to do with all of this? Are you going to leave these ideas as just another video you watched and forgot about? Or are you going to transform them into action, allowing each choice you make from today onward to carry a new energy? If this content touched you in any way, if it made you think, feel, or perceive something different, then I sincerely ask you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Even if it's anonymous, share your question, your experience, your story. Your comment can strengthen someone who is also seeking transformation, and together, we can create a more vibrationally conscious, awakened, and self-connected community. Thank you for being here, thank you for feeling, thank you for the vibe. The next step is now yours.